As somebody who intakes a lot of media, I've seen a lot of characters who have really cool powers and personality traits that make me sit there and think, what happens when their story ends, and will they be remembered as legends? And for some, their stories do end, whilst for others, their story goes on for years and it still hasn't ended. So we'll have to see how they will be remembered in years to come. Now, the reason this intrigues me so much is because I'm always curious about what classes certain heroes or just characters in general would be in if they were in Fate, as Fate is my favorite piece of fiction. So what I've decided to do is I've decided to kill my own curiosity and come up with those answers. So yes, in today's video, I'll be finding out what classes certain fictional characters belong in if they were summoned as a servant in Fate. So strap in, because I'm going to get real in depth with this video. But before I get into the video, if you guys enjoy content like this, you know what to do. Hit that like button and subscribe, as I do post content like this regularly, and to be honest, it's a win-win. You guys show me love and support, and I give it back to you in the form of videos. Whether it's finding out what classes certain characters would be in if they were in Fate, other anime, or just fiction in general, in due time I plan on covering it, so be there when I go there. But I feel like I've rambled on long enough, so I'll jump straight into the video and find out what classes certain fictional characters would be if they were summoned in Fate. Now, before I dive into the characters, I must go over the 7 classes I'll be including in this video, as I'm not going to cover FGO classes, as I don't feel like a lot of people know what they are. So I'm just going to go over the original 7, and I know there is meant to be 8, but I mean, most people just know the original 7, so I'm going to keep it to the original 7. Now, for those who don't know what the original 7 classes are, the first class is Saber, and it's definitely the most popular one, and it's pretty simple to explain. Essentially, the Saber class usually takes people with high combat levels and just prowess in general with decent magical abilities, and it also takes on legendary knights who use swords, and so the class isn't too hard to grasp. The most popular examples I can give for the Saber class are going to be Artoria, Nero, and Shiki from Garden of Tsukihime. And so moving on, we have the second most popular class, and that's the Archer class, and it's extremely self-explanatory. For the class, you must possess a really powerful weapon that can shoot projectiles, and that's literally it. The most popular example that I can use for this class will be Shiro Emiya, and as we all know, Shiro uses daggers, but he can also use a bow as well. So that should just show you how lenient the class is when it comes down to you being an archer. So yeah, as long as you have like an ultimate move that is tied to something that can shoot something, or use it on a regular basis, then you do qualify for the archer class. Next up, we have Lancer, and this is also pretty simple as well. It's just like the Saber class, your attributes do need to be pretty high, especially in agility. But aside from that, you do need to specialize in some sort of long range melee weapon, and usually people that are summoned from this class are legendary knights like Cullen and Dearmud. But for the most part, having really good physical capabilities whilst also being extremely agile and specializing in a long range melee weapon are the main qualifications. And so moving on, we have Rider, and Rider is extremely simple to explain. They need to have ridden on something or be known for it to qualify for it, or just being closely attached to it. It could be a living thing like a Pegasus, like what Medusa rides on, or it could be a man-made construction like a chariot, since that's what Iskandar rides. You don't need any crazy physical capabilities for this role either, as it's just mainly you riding on things, so yeah. So next up is Caster, and this one can require you to have 0 physical capabilities, but you must be amazing at magecraft and be extremely adept at spellcasting. Essentially, unlike the others, you can be completely horrendous at everything else aside from magecraft or just making spells and still be summoned, so that's really great to keep in mind for later. 2 examples that we can look at are Girdere and Medea. But moving on, we have Assassin, and even though Hassan I Saba has said to only they can be summoned, Kojiro exists, and who really cares about him since this is my video? So Hassan and, well, their group is called Hassan. You couldn't disrespectfully sit down because who cares about you? Anywho, the qualifications for this class are pretty simple. You just have to be an assassin, and that's pretty much it. I would give you examples, but like, I mean, aside from Hassan, Jack the Ripper is the main one, along with Kojiro. So yeah. And so finally, we have Berserker, and the name says it all. These are people who have gone berserk in battle at least once. Now usually they have low stats, but become super strong through the rage enhancements, but it is possible for you to summon super strong people through it, like Lancelot and even Hercules. Also, this class is referred to as the strongest class, so that's great to know. Usually this is where I'd list out popular people, but I've already done that since, well, Lancelot and Hercules we've already spoken about. And so with that being said, I want to move into the last things I need to explain, and those are noble phantasms. Noble phantasms are really easy to explain, as they are basically the person's iconic thing or just something that embodies them. For example, Deku's noble phantasm would be the Detroit Delaware Smash, or for somebody like Captain America, you could say it's his shield. Essentially, noble phantasms are something that you can hear or see and instantly know who that person is, as it's written down about them or just tied to them inside the history books. And so with that being said, I feel like I've explained everything I need to say, so why don't we cover each of these characters. And so to begin the what if section, we have Goku. And for a bit, I sat here and wondered what class he would suit, as for a while, I thought he would be a caster, as he's extremely proficient in Ki. But that didn't sit well with me until I went back to reread the requirements for each category, and the one I decided to choose for him was Lancer. And the reason I decided to go with Lancer was because of the power pole and how he was shown with it at the end of GT. Now for the first script I wrote for this video, I had him as a Lancer, but then I switched him to a Berserker. But then I thought back to the end of GT and how he was with the power pole and how they're portraying him nowadays, and I was like, yeah, I think Lancer does make more sense, as even as early on as the original Dragon Ball, he did start out with the power pole. And although Berserker does seem nice, since obviously Super Saiyan and whatnot, it would just make more sense. And so what would his noble phantasm be? What would be his transformations from Super Saiyan 1 all the way up to Ultra Instinct, as they're all iconic. And although I know people are going to talk about the Kamehameha, we do have many other users. Like, people could think he was Roshi, even Tien, Yamcha, Krillin, Gohan, Goten, the list goes on. Now, if you want to make him a Berserker with his noble phantasm being a Kamehameha and him just walking around Super Saiyan, that's fine, as I don't really mind that as well. You know, Goku is known for those two things, and you could say that over the picks I chose, they're more iconic and tied to him. Of how the story is now with Goku trying to be more tranquil, and especially with him being portrayed a lot more the power pole, I do believe that the Lancer class does suit him. And so moving on, we have Sanjin Woo, and I'm going to place him in the Assassin class. Now, just like Goku, I did have another class for him, and that was going to be Caster, until I thought about his noble phantasm and what he could do without it, and the Assassin role just felt far better for him, as he does have stealth magic and he does use daggers, so I'd see him more as an assassin. Now, I will say that of all the assassins that we've seen, he's probably going to be the most versatile, and so with his noble phantasm, he'll definitely be summoning his shadow army. With him being a shadow monarch, this definitely has to be his noble phantasm, and what I love about his noble phantasm is how it flips everything the assassin role stands for on its head. It's like after he gets found out, or after he feels like not playing in the shadows anymore, he can spawn an entire army and walk you down, flipping it on its head like I just said. Up next is Superman, and he is one person where I have to say that he doesn't fit any of the classes, but we have seen him angry a few times, so making him a Berserker is what I'm going to have to do for him, and his noble phantasm is definitely going to be his Kryptonian powers outside of his super strength and flight, and along with him getting his full bag, the S on his chest will appear. In my eyes, this is extremely fair, as even without his heat vision and frost breath, he's extremely overpowered, and whenever people do talk about him in fights, they rarely bring it up anyway. So him getting it with his noble phantasm along with the S on his chest appearing is perfect for him. Moving on, we have Spawn, and he is the most obvious Berserker character here. Now, while you could say him being an archer, since he does use a lot of weapons and guns especially, Spawn, especially in the beginning, nowadays I'll say he's more cold and more calculated, but there is still a lot of venom in him. But in the beginning, he was a very angry person, so I do feel like the Berserker class does fit him. And so what would his noble phantasm be? Well, if you know anything about Spawn, you know that his powers are extremely vast. So I guess his noble phantasm would probably be his cape, and along with it, he can just do whatever he pleases. I'd say just like Superman, he's gonna start off with just his super strength and his flight, but when he gets his cape, he's then gonna get all of his powers. Now you may be thinking, why would you say his cape is going to be his noble phantasm? Well, I feel like without his cape, people are gonna look at him and be like, oh, that can look like Venom. I mean, you could think that. I mean, they don't look that different. And so when he then gets his cape, I feel like that's when he looks like Spawn and you can identify them. Now, people that read Spawn and just know comics know that Spawn and Venom look completely different, but to the regular person, they do kind of look similar. So I'd say, yeah, when he gets his cape, I feel like that is when you can definitely identify him and say that that is what his most iconic thing could be. As we're moving past him, we have Gojo, and I think this is pretty simple, and it's Castor. Yes, his physical capabilities are good, but he doesn't really do much else. He doesn't wield any weapons, and for the most part, he's a Jujutsu sorcerer. And what do they specialize in? Cursed energy, and that can just be translated over to magecraft, meaning that yeah, Castor is probably the best thing for him. And so for his noble phantasm, it's going to be Infinity along with his domain expansion. Now why I did this is because everybody knows him for his Infinity and his domain expansion. So I was thinking I basically make most of his CT complete, but when he then uses Noble Phantasm, he would then be able to obviously use his Infinity, which then unlocks his domain expansion. And so it's basically like, okay, once he gets his Infinity, his curse technique is complete, then he can then use his domain expansion. Make sense? Next, we have the Sentry, and once again, this is very simple. The Berserker class is the easiest one to give to him, as the Void exists, and that will be his Noble Phantasm. And although I'd love to ramble on more about Robert, there isn't really much left for me to say. He will be the regular Berserker mode, and then the Void will then be his Noble Phantasm. And so moving on from the Sentry is Dio. Now Dio is somebody that is very up in the air, as I don't believe he fits into many categories, meaning yes, I'm gonna have to put him in the Berserker category, as we do see him get mad often when he's in fights. And it's pretty simple what his Noble Phantasm will be. It will be the world, meaning when he regularly fights, he will have his vampire powers, and then when he uses the world, he will then be using his Noble Phantasm. And so moving on from him, we have another iconic hater, and that's the Reverse Flash. Now, Eobard Thawne is somebody who is driven by one thing, and that one thing is very well known. So what is it, guys? I'll let you guys make a guess. You have 1, 2, 3, okay, I've given you enough time. It's rage and hatred. So yeah, he instantly goes into the Berserker class. Now his Noble Phantasm, on the other hand, is a bit weird and complicated since, well, he already has a super speed, so what will it be? Well, I've decided to make it be his time travel, along with the yellow suit appearing. I'm just gonna have him like in a regular black suit, since most people who are summoned as a Berserker do come out in black, so I'm then gonna allow him to turn yellow and just have his regular suit when he then uses Noble Phantasm. And the reason I chose time travel is because we all know him for one thing, and that is going into the past and, you know, doing what he needs to do to Barry. And so up next is another very, very bad man, and that's Griffith. Now I know everybody is going to be looking at the screen and just thinking, oh, he's going to be another Berserker, isn't he? But no, in fact, Griffith doesn't even qualify for it in my mind, as I'd make him a Saber. Remember, Griffith was/is a master swordsman and even has some magical abilities, meaning yes, he actually does qualify for this role, and he is known as a knight. In fact, he's a very, very well known knight. In fact, he's actually a legendary knight in his own nation. So is he not just a typical Saber, even though he's a bad one? You may be thinking what his Noble Phantasm may be, and I'm gonna say he's gonna be able to spawn in the new Band of Hawks. Originally, I did have the Eclipse being his Noble Phantasm, but in the history books, they'll have him down as this fearless leader of the great Band of Hawks, so I'm gonna make him spawn them in. And so finally, we have Shadow, and Shadow fits a category that no one else is qualified for yet, and that's going to be Archer. as he does use guns often, and even though he is broody, let's be honest, who doesn't love it when he's wielding his gun? So yes, he'll be in the Archer class. And so for his Noble Phantasm, it's going to be Super Shadow. And so with that being said, that isn't the end of the video, as I'm going to throw them into their own Grail wars to see if they can win. Now the Grail war I'm going to put them in will be the 5th one, and it'll be the Ultimate Blade Works route or the Ren route, as I feel like people are the most familiar with it. So with that being said, why don't we jump straight into the Grail wars. And so first up, we have Goku, and since he's going to be swapping places with Cole Cullen, the story here already goes different to how it does in canon, as Cole Cullen was actually taken away from his master before the Grail War even began, and was out there to go get information on Kirei's behalf. Now the massive question that we do need to ask ourselves is whether Goku can resist the magic or he can't. Now if he uses Noble Phantasm and powers all the way up, could he break out of it? Possibly, but we have seen characters that are stronger than him be bound by these command spells, meaning that he'd basically do everything Cole Cullen would do, but he'd probably do it in a better fashion, as he's probably just going to be out there to fight and knows that he's being forced to fight against his will. And so even though he's going to be out there boxing everybody, gaining knowledge and intelligence and obviously having fun, he isn't going to be liking it deep down. And so I do believe that he is probably going to try to turn against Kirei the exact same way Cole did, but it's going to end the exact same way, and yeah, he does, he does bite his tongue off, or something just happens to where he just dies. So unfortunately, that is an L up on the board for Goku. Up next is Sanjin Woo, and he's going to be summoned by Medea. Now, this is a bit of an issue, as Sanjin Woo will hear what Medea has to say, and he'll probably just kill her outright there on the spot and take her shadow, meaning he's gonna then do his own thing to try and win the war. Also, the reason he was able to break out of it while Goku can't is because he does have magical resistance. And so yeah, Goku does, but it isn't to a degree that Sanjin Woo does, as well. Goku just needs to power up and use his ki, while Sanjin Woo just has hacks to the point where he can just break out of it naturally. Now he'd go around and target everybody else to see what their powers are and to see what they're like, and if he runs into Gilgamesh, it's going to be interesting, but if he runs into Saber, it may be over for Saber. Now it genuinely depends on if he gets to see how Shiro and Rin act, but if he doesn't get time to actually interact with them, then yeah, I don't think it's possible for them to even beat him. And once he then defeats their heroes, he can take them and make them his shadow, meaning yeah, Gilgamesh and just everybody else that's in the war can be run down, meaning that's an easy dub for him. Up next is Superman, and he's going to be summoned by Ilya. Now here's the funny thing, Superman, unlike Sanjin Woo, doesn't have any magical resistance, so if Ilya does tell him to do something, he'll have to do it. But one thing he can do is go to the sun and charge energy, and since he does see Ilya as this little girl who does seem pretty innocent, he's probably going to work along with her, so he'll probably go out to the sun to supercharge, and so when he comes back down to earth, yeah, I don't think it's going to be close. Especially with the Berserker amp that he will get. If he then uses Noble Phantasm, I don't know if anybody's going to be able to stop him. Gilgamesh at full power should be able to, but it depends on how he fights Clark. If he decides to fight Clark seriously, then I can see him technically beating Clark, but if he doesn't and he decides to obviously sit there and just try to play around with him and not see him as a threat, then yeah, I don't think Gilgamesh can win. Now as we do see in the story, I think this Gilgamesh may be a little bit cocky, so we're gonna make this a win. Moving on, we have Spawn, and he'll be summoned by Ilya, and he'll be willing to help her. So how will this play out? Well, to put it bluntly, no one can stop Spawn. Not even full power Saber and Gilgamesh. He steamrolls everyone, granting Ilya another win. Up next is Gojo, and he'll be summoned by Archerum, and Archerum and Gojo, even though you may be like, oh yeah, no, they could get along, no, him and Gojo will not get along. Gojo and him are two different people, and so I do think that he may just kill him. And Gojo can roam around free because he does have the 6 eyes, meaning that yeah, he can survive without a master. So moving past that point, would Gojo be able to win? Now after spamming many black flashes, using his domain expansion and infinity on repeat, Gojo will not win, and that's mainly due to the speed advantage. And if he does run into Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh is definitely gonna be able to just blitz him and just get through it. One thing I'll definitely say though is that Gojo is probably gonna have the most fun he'll ever have in his life here. He's gonna be able to run rampant, and the people here can't actually keep up with him. But yeah, Gojo doesn't win here. And so moving on, we have the Sentry, and Jesus, Ilya keeps getting granted these OP ass characters. Oh, and for anybody that's curious, yeah, the Sentry will stomp everyone here. If he's backed into a corner and he has to use his noble Phantasm, then I just don't see anybody stopping him here. And so that is another win for Ilya. Up next is Dio, and Dio would be a weird combo alongside Ilya, but Dio would definitely play along with her just to get the Grail. So would they win? As Dio is smart, he would know to use his noble Phantasm strategically and go around, and may even try to turn people into vampires so they can work alongside him. But this is good in theory. Would it actually work in practice? No. Dio just doesn't have what it takes to take on the head honchos inside the war, meaning unfortunately Dio loses. But fortunately this is Ilya's first loss, so I mean yeah. Following up on Dio, we have Iobarthon. And knowing him, he'd probably just kill Ilya and go run off and do what he needs to do and probably try to grab the Grail. Honestly, I don't think anybody can stop him here, like literally, as he probably catches them all off guard, which he can definitely do. So yeah, and if he needs to use his noble Phantasm, I do believe that it would be pointless, but being able to sneak people as they summon their servants is pretty OP. So yeah, this is an easy win for Iobarthon. And the reason I think he would just outright kill Ilya is because I think Ilya would try to command him and he'd be like, who are you talking to? Yeah, Ilya does die, but technically her servant does win, so is that a win for her? I guess. Following up on Iobarthon, we have Griffith. And Griffith is a funny case as he'd spawn in and help Shiro against Lancer, but he'd struggle quite a bit. He'd fight against Lancer, and obviously since Lancer is only there to grab intel, he'd leave after Griffith is like, okay, this is getting a little bit serious for me. And so after that, Griffith will be around Shiro the exact same way Saber would, and I would see everything playing out the exact same way. And obviously with Shiro bleeding out after Lancer went after him again, I do see Griffith actually healing him, since Griffith can heal people. Now this would lead to Rin doing everything that she does in canon, and this is where Griffith then gets to know about the Holy Grail, and he would probably help them out, as although he would like the Grail, I don't think he wants it as much as everybody else would want it. And so he'd be there to go get the Grail because obviously he wants to expand his empire, but he'd know that Shiro isn't a competent master, and so Griffith would try to give him ways to get around it, as Griffith is smart. And so when it comes down to it and the final battles are going on, Griffith should be able to hold himself. He'll be fine. I mean, he can just summon his whole army and he'll be fine. And obviously we know that the Grail has been infected at this point, so he's going to be pretty mad that obviously he fought for nothing. But I do see Griffith actually having a sort of nice time here, as although he is somebody that, I mean, he is very bad, he isn't bad to the point where he'd straight up kill Shiro or just do something. And yeah, so essentially Griffith would have a nice time here, and the story would definitely play out the exact same way it did in canon, meaning yeah, it is a win for Griffith. And so finally we have Shadow. Now Shadow will be summoned by Rin, and Rin would be extremely confused as she got a hedgehog instead of Saber, but it's fine. Now as Shadow does hear about the Grail, he'll be interested because he wants to protect humanity, and I do believe the thought of reviving Maria will come across his mind, and so he'll want to help Ren out. And so when Archer usually faces Lancer on the school grounds, what would happen? Lancer gets packed up instantly, as Shadow isn't somebody he can fight, and past that point the story would be clean sailing and just be easy for Rin, as Shadow can wipe out anybody that he needs to. And if Shadow runs into Gilgamesh, Super Shadow's coming out. Now everybody can have their debates on who wins. Personally, Stay Night Gilgamesh is very weird in my eyes, as we do know that if he's serious, he should be able to wipe out everybody, but he wasn't serious for the most of it. And so if he's not serious against Shadow, especially since he's a hedgehog, I mean, I see Super Shadow just wiping him out and just taking it home. So yeah, that's a W up on the board for Ren and Shadow. And so with that being said, I feel like I've said everything I need to say, so why don't we conclude the video. In the end, out of the 10 of them, 7 of them won and 3 of them lost. And so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, because I certainly did enjoy writing and recording it. If you guys want part 2 of this video, or even part 2 of my last video where I covered bad things about certain good characters, say in the comments and I'll definitely get around to doing it. But with that being said, I shall see you guys in the next video. Thank you for the support. I love you all. Goodbye.